Greetings, my name is Samuel Dibawario. I'm currently a student at the University of Nairobi. I'm pursuing BSc Food Science and Technology, and I'm in my final year of training. I'm an enthusiast of organic agriculture. I love organic agriculture, and I also practice organic agriculture where I come from. I am someone who promotes organic agriculture because organic agriculture can really feed the world. It produces healthier foods, and also if you look at the principles of agroecology, all of them, when they are envisioned, they will lead to us to having an environment which is both can sustain the human beings to live and eat food from it, and the environment can maintain, and we can leave the environment after we go. So my mission is that to train, to produce, and to practice organic agriculture. And my vision is slightly biased to the Horn of Africa, is that I envision a food secure Horn of Africa where we have enough food for ourselves, we can produce more, and at least we change the narrative. Because if you look at the persisting narrative is that northern Kenya and the greater Horn of Africa, we can't produce enough food. So a lot of aid, a lot of media, which covers all the negative parts of our country and the greater Horn of Africa. So my vision is just to change that narrative and ensure that we produce more in the Horn of Africa in an organic way. I've always been interested in farming, always been interested in being outside, always been interested in producing. If memory serves me well, when I was a kid, we used to do a lot of farming. So we used to go to the farms, we plant as a community, we harvest as a community, and we weed as a community. So those are some of the fond memories I have of farming. Also in high school, although I did not take agriculture as a subject, I used to be very passionate about agriculture. So whenever the Greek students went to the farms to either weed or do their practicals and projects, I was always there. So I can say that I've always been interested in farming, and of late I've started practicing farming and the organic agricultural farming. Yeah, so what inspired me to shift from conventional farming is that if you look at the recent statistics and data, is that lifestyle diseases are on the rise, and if you backtrack the problem comes from food, because the food you eat is what builds you. So the modern food production system employs a lot of chemicals. The chemicals have a lot of health repercussions on human health. Another thing which prompted me to shift to organic agriculture is that organic agriculture is cheaper in that you encompass something like recycling. So rather than throwing away all the kitchen refuse, you just put them together. Rather than burning all the leaves and forages and flowers, you put them together in a compost and you create an organic manure. Rather than purchasing a manure for around 2,600 a bag, you can get manure cheaper and organically from sourcing the things in your farm. Also in the aspect of recycling, there's something which is very interesting I've come to know, is that rather than throwing the eggshells of chicken, you can really take the eggshells, crush them, form a powder. And if you know that 98% of the eggshells is made of calcium. So rather than going and buying the calcium ammonium nitrate fertilizer, you can custom make your own calcium fertilizer, so it is cheaper. The other thing is that organic agriculture is that it fetches better prices. That is obvious. So when I commence on commercial production, I know that my organic agriculture will do something good for me financially. So the context of farming in rangeland is that there's not a lot of farming in rangelands. So rangelands, if you look at the description of rangeland, it's a land which is basically filled with a lot of grass and grass-like structures. So the main thing which grows there is grass. So that means by default, we will have a lot of animals. So if you look at the rangelands of Kenya, we have a lot of cattle. So 70% of the beef which you eat in the country comes from the rangelands in Kenya. So the food system of rangelands in Kenya is mostly encompassed on producing and feeding the livestock, and that is where organic agriculture comes in. So organic agriculture encompasses the aspect of producing and mixing crop and animal, because there's diversification. So if you have a very big place, a very big land, so what you do with the land is that rather than having the whole of the land for pasture, you section a little bit of it for producing kales, vegetables, and some fruit trees, which will help greatly in the diversification of your diet and also control the environment. So the strength I've experienced in organic farming in rangeland is that first thing, if you look at the broader picture, is that rangelands, we have a lot of land. And if you look at the factors of production, one of the major factors of production is land. So you have a lot of land. 80% of Kenya's land is classified as arid and semi-arid. So that means we have a lot of land. The other thing is that, for example, if I give example of Marsabit County, my home county where I come from, is that around 22% of the land is arable, but only 3% is used. So that leaves a lot of percentage of land to be exploited. Another thing is that if you do rangeland agriculture in the rangelands, you have the opportunity of getting cheaper power. We have solar and we have wind. So if you look at the ecosystem itself, it will be clean energy and will be producing a lot of food at the same time. The other thing is that there's demand. That is obvious, there's demand. People in northern Kenya and the greater Horn of Africa and the arid and semi-arid lands, they cannot produce enough food for themselves. So that prompts them to import food from neighboring counties and neighboring countries. So if we manage to produce the food, we will cap the demand and there will be no need to import food while you can produce it on your own. Another thing is that this may sound a little bit melodramatic, but we have a lot of water in northern Kenya. If we use technology, we can convert the water from Lake Turkana, a salty water lake. We desalinate it and can practice irrigation. We also have, you can sink boreholes. If you sink boreholes, you get water and you can practice agriculture using the water. Because the main problem of practicing rangeland agriculture is lack of water. Yeah, so some of the weaknesses I've experienced personally is that people look at you differently when you start farming, because people are not used to someone taking a jembe and taking a very big piece of land starting producing farming. So that is the first thing, is that there are a lot of bias on agriculture. The other thing is that water. Water is a problem. So you have to depend on rain-fed agriculture. So if you don't have enough water, you have to purchase water. If you don't purchase water, you have to look for like storage equipments so that you can harvest the water during the rainy seasons and use it at the times of drought. The policies. So the policies in the country do not favor production or agricultural production in the greater rangelands of Kenya. Because if you look at what is legal and on paper, is that the rangelands are classified as wastelands. So that means that the lands cannot, they don't have any value unless foreign input is put into the land. So that leaves the rangelands with very little chance of investment for it to produce its own food and do other activities, because they are considered an economic liability. So that's a major challenge which we face, the policy aspect of rangelands, which are being classified as low productivity areas. So they're classified as low productivity areas and the other areas classified as high productivity areas. So that differentiation in the productivity is what I think the policy aspect, which discourages very many investors from investing in the greater northern Kenya to produce food commercially. Another problem is that in the rangelands or dryland agriculture is that you need a lot of capital. Yes, for you to have systems like irrigation, you need some capital. For you to set up a solar plant, you need some capital. So it requires a lot of money. So that is a little bit another challenge. And the other challenge is that the people of the northern Kenya, they practice a nomadic lifestyle. So people cannot stay in one place and do agriculture. So if, for example, you bring an initiative to produce food in a certain area of the county, so the people will be there for like 3 months, and when the rain fails, because they have a nomadic lifestyle and the animals must move, they move from place to place. So that is also another weakness. And the other thing is there's a lot of conflict. It's obvious that the conflict is based on resources. So there's a lot of conflict. So sometimes you may want to produce something, but you may have an initiative, but there's no peace. So if there's no peace, you discourage investors and you even discourage the producers from producing. Sometimes even the insecurity comes in that people can destroy really your infrastructure. So you like set up a greenhouse, but the greenhouse can be destroyed. So that is another thing, another problem which I have experienced in the greater rangelands agricultural systems. So the threat which rangelands face is that of late there have been a lot of industrialization, in that people buy land, build commercial houses, set up industries. So if you do that, you reduce the amount of land available for farming, and that is a threat for organic agriculture in the area. Also there's a new concept which is coming, in that people are they have been used to the paradox of being given a lot of food. So like people don't see the urge to produce when they can be given subsidies and relief food. So there's another threat, the production system, in that you can produce, but people have been used to be given food rather than producing food for themselves. I think the government has done very little. Yeah, the government has done very little in that. The government, what it does mostly is that if you see a government vehicle, for example, all the government vehicles there, they just deliver food. You don't find a vehicle which has people who train farmers and follow up, and even they are there, they are very few. So the government has done very little. The government is just mostly focused on crisis management, in that when there's a drought, they source for foods and then they supply it, but they don't solve the real problem of sorting the problem. They just give some immediate or fast responses to the problem, but they don't try to solve the problem as a whole. So, having been alumni of AATC 2021, I must say that one of the most critical things which I learned from AATC, which I think can be implemented in Rangeland's ecosystem, is that the aspect of practicing. So AATC taught us to practice. So you are giving knowledge, and your knowledge you must use it. So the thing is that they should train more. So the training which I was given, I've been able to practice it on my own. I've been able to teach people who ask me how I do those things. For example, there's an interesting aspect is that in AATC, we went to a field excursion in Sylvia's Basket. So Sylvia's Basket is a rangeland in classification. So in Sylvia's Basket, she had a farm called a mandala farm. So it was a farm, round farm, very many crops planted together. So that was diversification. So the diversification is one of the things which I learned in that it's not a must you have a whole plantation which is filled with maize or beans. You can plant maize, beans, kales, spinach, onions. You can mix very many things. Another aspect is that if you mix the crops, there's the aspect in that, for example, if you plant kales with onions, the onions will discourage pests and weevils from attacking the kales. So that's another aspect. Also, you can plant flowers in the farms. So if you plant flowers, you increase the chance of pollination. So the AATC gave me the practical knowledge. I saw what was happening, and I'm practicing it as you're moving forward. I think communities in Rangelands need a sustainable training. They need training in that, as you all know, knowledge is power. If you teach someone how to get bread, it will be better than giving that person bread. So training is essential. So you must really train the people in that. You train the youths. We have a lot of youths in the area. We have women groups. So people need training in that. People need to produce. We have a lot of land. The land is barren most of the time, not used. So if you teach them people how they can use and their resources for their gains, it will be good, because people need the training. In that, there's also a deficit in that. One of the weaknesses is that there's no training. There's no training in agriculture in the drylands. There are very, very few institutions set up in the drylands which do that activity. I can mention that there's at least the University of Turkana which offers training on dryland agriculture. So there's only one in the greater part of the northern frontier and the Rangelands district which are in Kenya. So if you provide custom-made training to farmers in the communities, it will be easily adopted, and it will really have great benefits to the society. So institutions like NutriProduce and BioVision have addressed the challenge of food security in northern Kenya by promoting not only farming but organic farming, in that they just give you the whole deal. They just teach how to produce, and they teach how to produce the best food. So the training aspect of NutriProduce and BioVision is something which is very fundamental. Also, that NutriProduce and BioVision, they can work more on not only teaching but also following up, like what they are doing right now, like following up what you have done with the information, following up how you are doing in your farm. I think that's a very noble initiative. Yeah, so I'd like to thank NutriProduce, BioVision, and everybody involved in making this production a success.